Several years ago, the US and Saudi Arabia made a pact, a fairly straightforward deal, oil for security. The US got Saudi oil. In exchange, it gave Saudi Arabia security guarantees. That was the deal. This arrangement has lasted for over 7 decades, but now it is under strain. The US and Saudi Arabia are at odds, and it is advantage China. Tonight, we'll tell you how. Riyadh is hosting a major summit. It is called the Arab-China Conference. On day one, they signed 30 agreements. We're talking about deals worth $10 billion, but that's not even the biggest headline. I'll tell you what is. A statement from Saudi Arabia's energy minister, Prince Abdul Aziz bin Salman. He's an older brother of MBS. He was asked about Riyadh's deepening ties with Beijing and the growing suspicions in the West over it. Do you know what the Saudi minister said? Let me quote from his response. I actually ignore it because as a business person, now you'll go where opportunity comes your way. We don't have to be facing any choice, which has to do with saying either with us or with the others. So the Saudis say they just ignore Western suspicions, and that's not all. They want to do more business with China. Listen to this.
When it comes to oil demand in China is still growing. So of course we have to capture some of that demand. So as chemical, we want to invest in China because we also have an ambitious program on crude to chemicals.
So the message is quite clear. Deeper ties with China are on the horizon, and the US will just have to deal with it. Needless to say, Washington is not thrilled. Just last week, Antony Blinken was in Riyadh. He's America's top diplomat, their foreign minister. He met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He also spoke with senior Saudi officials. And his message was this: the US is not leaving the region anytime soon, and Riyadh can count on Washington.
The United States is in this region to stay, and we remain deeply invested in partnering with all of you to build the brightest and strongest possible future of the Middle East. And indeed, with GCC at the core of our vision for a Middle East that is more stable, more secure, more prosperous, more integrated.
The reassurance hasn't moved the needle, though. Riyadh is still keen on engaging with China, and there's a reason for that. There's a trust deficit between the US and Saudi Arabia. Their differences are out in the open. You may remember this from last year, in fact. US President Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia. He did not even shake hands with the Crown Prince. They fist bumped each other. The encounter was awkward, to say the least. Remember, Biden had pledged to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah state. And here he was, trying to woo the same kingdom. MBS did not take kindly to that. Behind the scenes, he's said to have been tough with American officials. Reports say months before Blinken visited Riyadh, MBS had adopted a very harsh tone with Washington. Privately, he threatened to, quote-unquote, fundamentally alter ties with the US. What does that even mean, fundamentally altering ties? Reports say the Crown Prince suggested that he, and I'm quoting again, that he will not deal with the US administration anymore. He also promised, quote-unquote, major economic consequences for Washington. When did this happen? In October last year. Apparently, when Biden too was making threats, he had vowed to impose consequences on Saudi Arabia. What for? For cutting back the supply of oil in international markets. As it turned out, Biden did nothing of the sort, and MBS has prevailed. But it further weakened the relationship. Saudi officials have a long list of complaints. They think the US has become unreliable. They point at America's recent failures, like the hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan or the decision to withdraw support from Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. This was more than a decade back. It led to his downfall in 2011. Hosni Mubarak used to lead Egypt. The Saudis believe that in both these instances, America failed in its role as the net security provider in the region. Plus, they're upset over Iran. The Saudis are of the view that Washington has done little to contain Tehran. Hence the unease. It got worse with the Biden presidency. Enter China with money and with no lectures on human rights. The Saudis began exploring. The Chinese have excellent ties with Iran too. In March this year, they brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The two countries restored diplomatic ties. Last week, Iran reopened its embassy in Riyadh, and it happened at the same time when Blinken was in town. The message would not have been lost on the Americans. They failed to revive the nuclear deal with Iran, and now they're losing their grip on Saudi Arabia too. Washington is trying a different approach now. Instead of being combative, it is looking for dialogue. But Riyadh is not warming up to that. As of today, China has the upper hand.